There are, by the official laws of professional sports calendars, exactly 186 days between the first spring training workout and the last out of the World Series. Within those 186 days, a Major League Baseball team will play a minimum of 162 games, not counting the playoffs, which can add up to 19 more, against 29 other teams, in stadiums spread across 4 time zones, at a pace that demands a professional athlete perform at elite physical capacity every 24 to 48 hours for 6 consecutive months. The NFL plays 17 games and generates 365 days of cultural conversation. The NBA plays 82, and its media cycle runs year-round. Baseball plays 162, and the cultural consensus, held casually, repeated often, and rarely examined, is that this is somehow too many. The people who say this have, in most cases, watched approximately 9 baseball games in their lives. What follows is every phase of a Major League Baseball season, explained in roughly chronological order, from the one that begins in optimism so pure it borders on delusion, to the one that ends in either collective ecstasy or a specific, personal, hard-to-describe grief. The statistics are real. The historical context is real. The fact that a sport playing 162 games somehow manages to make every single one of them feel insufficient preparation for October is also real. The temptation to treat any of this with full gravity will be intermittently resisted. Spring training. What it is. Organized, televised hope. February. Somewhere in Florida or Arizona, depending on which half of the league you follow, grown men in baseball pants are jogging slowly across manicured grass in 74 degrees weather. The stands hold 8,000 people in shorts. Nobody is playing particularly hard. The score of the game currently in progress means nothing and will be forgotten before the parking lot empties. This is the most beloved month of the baseball calendar. Spring training games do not count. The statistics generated during spring training are not tracked in any official record. A player who bats .600 in March will receive a polite compliment and no additional compensation. A pitcher who posts a 0.00 ERA across 6 Cactus League starts has proven nothing except that he can retire hitters who are also not trying particularly hard. The games are, in the formal sense, meaningless. And yet, the stadiums fill. The broadcasts run. The fan bases rebuild their expectations from scratch on the structural foundation of 3 innings pitched by a 24-year-old AAA arm. The mechanism of spring training optimism is not irrational. Every team enters February with a 0-0 record. The winter's transactions, the free agent signings, the trades, the Rule 5 picks, the prospect who had a good Arizona Fall League have not yet been tested against reality. Every lineup looks functional on paper. Every rotation looks adequate in projection. The injuries have not happened yet. The slumps have not arrived. The manager's questionable bullpen decisions exist only hypothetically. This is the only month of the year in which a team that finished 68-94 the previous October enters the conversation as a plausible contender. The analysts know this is not true. The fans know this is not true. The fans watch the spring training broadcasts anyway. Baseball has managed to make false hope into appointment viewing, which is either a masterpiece of sports marketing or an accurate reflection of the human capacity to begin again, and the distinction probably depends on whether your team finished 68-94 last year. April. What it is. Reality. Arriving faster than projected. Opening day is the single best day in the baseball calendar. The stadiums are full. Actually full, not spring training full, but genuine regular season full, with people who have driven 3 hours and paid $90 for a seat and are wearing jerseys of players who may or may not still be on the team by August. The starting pitchers are fresh. The lineups are healthy. The closer has not yet blown 3 saves in the final week of September. The problem with opening day is April 2nd. A Major League Baseball season plays out over so many games and so many days that a 2-week sample size tells the observer almost nothing. A team that goes 4-10 in April and finishes first in its division in October is not an anomaly. It is a documented, recurring phenomenon. The Chicago Cubs went 11-24 in April 2016 and won the World Series in November of 2016. The 2019 Washington Nationals were 19-31 through the end of May. They won the World Series that October. April in baseball is the financial projection prepared before any of the actual fiscal year has occurred. The standings in April are not the standings. They are a hypothesis. Pitchers who were outstanding in spring training are discovering that the hitters in the National League Central have slightly different tendencies than the hitters in the Cactus League. Position players who hit .290 in February are learning that the pitchers they are now facing have also reviewed their tendencies from the previous 2 seasons and have adjusted accordingly. The sample size is small. The conclusions people draw from it are large. This is baseball in April, a sport that requires 162 data points being analyzed after 12. The weather in April also does not cooperate with the pretense that the season has arrived. Games in Boston and Chicago and Cleveland and Minneapolis are played in 38-degree weather in front of 20,000 people in parkas who fundamentally misunderstand what they signed up for in February. The starting pitcher's fingers are numb. The ball does not carry in cold air the same way it carries in July. The late-game bullpen arms are wearing arm sleeves under their jerseys and cannot feel their release points. The games look slightly wrong. This is fine. April is simply wrong. It is baseball's establishing shot, necessary for context, representative of very little. May and June. What it is. When the league sorts itself out, whether you're ready or not. By late May, the sample sizes have become meaningful. A team that went 15-8 in April and has now gone 8-17 in May is not a first-place team having a bad stretch. It is a team revealing its actual quality after 6 weeks of clarifying evidence. The projections that said they were an 83-win team all along were not wrong. They were simply not yet confirmed. This is the phase of the season that separates the teams that believed their spring training narratives from the teams that understood them as provisional. It is also the phase that produces the most instructive version of baseball to actually watch. The pitching rotations are fully established, the lineup construction has stabilized, and the managers have stopped experimenting. Everyone has committed to their answers, and the games now reveal whether those answers were correct. June is when the 162-game schedule stops feeling abstract and starts feeling physical. A starting pitcher on a 5-man rotation makes 32 to 34 starts in a full season. By the end of June, he has thrown approximately 14 of them. His arm is not injured precisely, but it is no longer the arm he had in April. The cumulative inflammation, the microscopic tissue stress, the fatigue that doesn't respond to a single day's rest the way it did when he was 25, these are present. The velocity is usually within a mile per hour of the April reading. The secondary pitches are less crisp. The margin between executing a fastball at the edge of the zone and leaving it over the middle has narrowed slightly. Most hitters cannot detect this. The good ones can. The body in June knows things the box score doesn't publish. Position players are experiencing their own version of this. An outfielder who has taken 70 swings in batting practice and played 9 innings in the field daily since mid-February has accumulated roughly 14,000 individual explosive movements of the wrists, forearms, and shoulder girdle. The joints are fine, the mechanics are sound, but the explosive twitch, the bat speed that is the first thing to go and the last thing anyone admits is going, has declined by 2 to 4% from its April level. 2 to 4% of bat speed in Major League Baseball is the difference between a line drive and a weak ground out to second base. It is also completely invisible on any broadcast. 4. The All-Star Break. What it is: a 3-day pause inside a 6-month sentence. The All-Star Game itself is, in the ranking of meaningful sporting events, somewhere between exhibition game and extremely elaborate batting practice. Since 2003, when the game counted for home field advantage in the World Series, a policy that was correctly identified as deeply unreasonable and eventually reversed in 2017, it has returned to its original status as a celebration of the sport's best players playing together in a format that ensures no one pitches more than 2 innings. The players chosen for the All-Star Game represent a genuine honor. The players chosen for the All-Star Game do not always represent the most statistically qualified candidates at their positions because fan voting and manager discretion introduce variables that advanced metrics cannot fully account for. This is a source of annual conversation that has not produced a better selection process, but has produced consistent engagement, which is possibly the actual goal. The All-Star Break matters because of what it is not: a game that counts. 3 days, no games in the standings. The regulars rest. The trainers treat the things that have been getting treated and mostly ignored since May. The pitchers who have thrown over 100 innings since April get to throw 0 innings for 72 hours, which their ulnar collateral ligaments receive with quiet gratitude. The teams below .50 at the All-Star Break that will make the playoffs anyway are already being identified by the analysts. The analysts are correct about which teams they are in approximately 60% of cases. The other 40% are why October still works. 5. July. The trade deadline. What it is: the front office getting involved in the on-field product. The non-waiver trade deadline, now a single hard deadline of August 1st following a 2019 rule change, is the moment at which the baseball season converts from a sporting competition into a visible, real-time negotiation between franchises with incompatible goals. The teams in first place want to acquire the players who will hold their leads through September. The teams 10 games back want to trade those same players for the prospects who will allow them to compete in 2027. The fans of teams selling players at the deadline experience a specific grief that is different from losing a playoff game. A playoff loss is a conclusion. A trade deadline sell-off is an announcement: we are not competing this year, we know we are not competing this year, and here is the evidence in the form of your favorite player now wearing a different uniform. Carlos Beltran was traded 4 times during his career at or near trade deadlines. Each time he was one of the best players on the team that acquired him. Each time, the fans of the team that acquired him had approximately 6 weeks to watch him before the playoffs began. 6 weeks is long enough to develop attachment. It is not always long enough to win a championship. The best players at the trade deadline are available because the teams that developed them cannot afford to keep them. This is the business model. The fans are aware of this and find it objectionable. This awareness and objection have not changed the business model. The deadline produces deals that look obviously correct in retrospect and were deeply contested in real time. It produces deals that looked correct in real time and were obviously wrong by October. The difference between these categories is sometimes a single injury, a single bad start, a single blown save in a series that would have otherwise changed the trajectory of someone's career. The margin in baseball is so thin that the entire enterprise of trade deadline analysis, the salary dumps, the prospect package evaluations, the service time calculations, rests on outcomes that can be determined by a pitcher slipping on a wet mound in August. August and the dog days. What it is: the month that separates teams with depth from teams with narratives. August is the least glamorous phase of the baseball calendar. The weather is wrong, too hot, humid in the east and Midwest, dry and suffocating in the Southwest. The starting pitchers are approaching 150 innings pitched. The position players are running on something closer to professional obligation than physical freshness. The schedule shows no particular mercy. a 4-game series in Atlanta, then a flight to San Francisco, then 3 games against a team that has nothing to play for, but is sufficiently professional to make your life difficult anyway. The teams with genuine depth do not notice August the way the other teams do. A roster built with internal options, a AAA outfielder who can contribute at the major league level, a bullpen that is not relying on the same 2 arms every close game, continues to play functional baseball through the fatigue. The teams built around 6 or 7 key contributors and held together by optimism in April begin in August to show the structural load-bearing problems that the first 100 games concealed. The standings in August mean what the standings in April did not, something close to the truth. Winning in August requires a manager to make decisions that are not popular with the players who are not playing. The 35-year-old veteran who has earned his roster spot over a decade of professional service is watching a 26-year-old with better underlying metrics get his at-bats in a pennant race. The veteran understands this intellectually. Understanding something intellectually does not prevent the experience from being what it is. The clubhouse in August smells different from the clubhouse in April. This is partly the season's physical accumulation. It is partly the standings. Teams in first place in August have a specific, purposeful energy that cannot be manufactured. It exists because the record is real. Teams 5 games back in August have a different quality entirely, something between desperate focus and the performance of desperate focus. And the difference between those 2 things is usually what the standings reflect by October 1st. September. What it is, 162 games becoming 5. September in baseball is 2 completely different months happening simultaneously. For the teams out of contention, and by September the math is clarified which teams those are with an exactness that April never offered. It is an extended audition. The rosters expand on September 1st, allowing teams to call up additional players from their minor league systems, and the games serve as extended evaluation for front offices, determining which players deserve roster consideration in the following season. For the teams in contention, September is the month during which the entire regular season was either worth it or wasn't. The September pennant race is the most emotionally efficient sport in existence. A 5-game winning streak changes everything. A 3-game sweep in the wrong direction can effectively eliminate a team that was in first place 9 days earlier. The wildcard races involve teams that were 8 games back in August and are now 1 game back with 12 to play. And the games between them carry a weight that is disproportionate to any individual game's mathematical contribution to the standings. A single September game, in certain circumstances, is worth exactly 162nd of the regular season and simultaneously feels like the most important thing happening in North American sports. The pitchers who were managed carefully in August are being used differently now. The starter who was limited to 5 innings through July is going 7 in September because the team cannot afford not to ask. The closer, who is deployed in save situations only, is pitching in the 8th inning of tied games because the 8th inning in September is not the same as the 8th inning in May. The roster is being spent. Teams that entered September with comfortable leads have, on multiple occasions in baseball history, not won their divisions. The 2007 New York Mets led the NL East by 7 games with 17 to play. They finished 1 game behind the Phillies. The 2011 Red Sox in September went 7-20, producing what baseball media referred to as a collapse of historical dimensions. The word historical is used in baseball more than in most fields because baseball has been played long enough to provide a documented comparison for nearly every contemporary failure. 8. The playoffs. What it is? A different sport using the same equipment. The playoffs are not the continuation of the regular season. This is not a commentary, it is a mechanical description. The teams that reach October have spent 6 months demonstrating their quality across 162 data points. The playoff series eliminates most of the information those data points were designed to provide. A 5-game wildcard series contains roughly 3% of the information content of a full season. The best team in baseball, the team that won 105 regular season games, that demonstrated excellence across every skill category, whose rotation, lineup, and bullpen were the best available collective evidence of organizational quality, can lose a 5-game series in October because one pitcher had 2 bad starts, and one game was rained out and rescheduled, and the travel schedule disrupted the rotation. This happens. It has happened multiple times. It will happen again. The regular season identifies who the best teams are. The playoffs produce champions. These are not always the same outcome. Baseball has decided it is comfortable with this, and has been comfortable with it for long enough that the argument is now largely academic. 9. The World Series. What it is. The end of the sentence that started in February. The World Series is 7 games or fewer. The teams that play in it have been playing baseball since mid-February. By the time the first pitch of Game 1 is thrown, the rosters have been playing competitive baseball for approximately 245 days. The pitching staffs have thrown between 1,300 and 1,500 innings. The position players have accumulated between 1,700 and 2,000 plate appearances. The travel miles are in the tens of thousands. The training staff has been managing injuries both declared and undeclared since April. The World Series is played by people running on something that is not exactly physical freshness, but has been refined into something more durable than that over the course of a season. The team that wins the World Series does not necessarily have the most talent. It has the best combination of talent, health, pitching alignment, and timing in October, which is its own form of superiority that the regular season was not designed to measure. The Astros, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Giants, the franchises that have won championships in recent decades are also by most measures among the most competently constructed organizations in the sport. The correlation between regular season quality and championship outcomes is real. It is not one-to-one. Baseball does not offer one-to-one correlations between preparation and outcome. This is either the sport's fundamental flaw or its most honest quality. The morning after the World Series ends, the winning city celebrates. The losing city grieves in the specific way that a loss in a deciding game produces. Not the clean grief of being eliminated in the first round, but the compound grief of having come close enough to make the alternative feel tangible. The players who did not reach the World Series are already in conversations with their agents about the offseason. The players who lost the World Series are in those same conversations. The players who won the World Series are in those conversations too, and will be eligible for free agency or arbitration within 60 days. Somewhere, already, a team's front office is in early discussions about a free agent signing that will be announced in December. That signing will be celebrated in January. In February, the player will report to spring training. The standings will be 0-0. The season will have not yet happened. The possibilities will be once again unlimited.